So now, good morning to all of you. Indeed, you are quite numerous in this beautiful morning here in Paris, and I hope the morning is also beautiful in all the places where you are connecting from. And we have actually quite a high number of people attending the event, and we take it as a sign of the high importance of this topic we're discussing today, and also of the timeless of this online event. My name is Jose Diaz. I'm a senior policy advisor in the Sigma program. And of course, it will be my pleasure to guide us and you all through this today event. An event that you all have seen from the agenda, which promises to be very interesting. So before jumping into today's contents, I will gladly give the floor to Florian Hauser, the team leading the horizontal unit on public administration reform in DG NEAR of the European Commission, for a kind welcome and intro words.
Thank you very much, Jose, and you're all very welcome to this very interesting topic. And you might call us nerds, but Jose and I, we were chatting a bit just before this started, said this is a really interesting topic. And it's one of these things that, you know, you can say, okay, this is easy because we have all the technology in place to create a secure digital identity, but the reality is of making this happen, and in fact having trust in the system is not always there. So making it work is I think the challenge here, and I'm really curious to hear from you what is your experience and whether you feel it works and whether you feel that your citizens and businesses can use the opportunity of having a digital identity and good trust services that actually open the door to having you know, all these services online. I remember a conversation we had with the colleagues from Estonia already 5 years ago, and Estonia has successfully introduced the e-identity and the e-signature, and the combination of the two enabled them to put services online and saved the state the equivalent of 2% of GDP. That's the equivalent of the entire defense budget. Now, this is quite a nice story, but not every country is able to do this. My own country, Germany, they still ask you, please come to the municipality to get your documents in person. And, you know, but if you, once you have been able to work with this, I live now in Belgium, and I do my taxes and I sign in with my EID, and it actually works, which is unusual for Belgium. And it takes 3 minutes to do your taxes, you know, and then I remember how it was before when the form came and you have to fill out everything again that you fill out every year anyway, and it doesn't change, and it's so painful. So saving money is not only the cost for the administration, but also the cost for the citizens in their valuable time. Now, as I said, you know, the difference is between what is possible. We know it's possible. Also, the EU has many tools and enablers. And by the way, as Jose said, you know, I work in the Directorate General that is your partner, but I'm not the super expert, and I'm rather looking forward to hearing the experts in this seminar. But we have some experts in our Directorate General for Informatics. We call it DG Digit and DG Connect. And if ever you have any questions about what the EU does, what is the EU framework, or what the EU can offer, please reach out, and beyond this seminar, we'll be happy to support you. Now, having said that, so while I'm curious to hear how things work for you on this topic so far, I'm curious to hear also any experiences with cross-border services, because this would be the next step for the EU. We have the single digital gateway, and the dream is that Jose from Spain can moved to Sweden and does all his administration online seamlessly, or if he wants to open a company in Germany and Portugal, he can do this in one place. And the reality, unfortunately, is quite different, mainly because we also lack the interoperability. So, as I said, the problem is not with the technology, but a lot what is around the technology, managing the processes, managing the change. And then last but not least, is there trust in the system, and are people actually using it? You might have a situation where we said, well, the system works, but nobody's using it because either they don't know how or they don't trust it. So I think that is also very important. So I think we need to look at sort of the holistic picture of this. And I'm really curious to hear your experiences and to learn from the great experts we hear today. So I wish you a successful seminar. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Florian, for finding one spot in your very busy agenda, that we all know that you deal with many, many projects in DigiNear, and we are grateful for your support, not only to Sigma, but also to the Western Balkan public administrations for your great support. And let me also introduce Mr. Goran Pastrovic. Goran is a senior expert in quality management. He's also currently being engaged as short-term external expert for Sigma OECD. Previously, he was working at RESPA for more than 10 years, managing all of the regional activities in the field of digitalization of public administration. So please, Goran, if you could say a few words. Oh, Goran, you are unmuted.
I'm very sorry. Good morning to everyone, and I was very much inspired both by you and Florian about the intention of this very meeting. Since being already 10 years working intensively in digital transformation of the Western Balkans, I must admit that all challenges mentioned just now by you and Florian are almost the same which we are facing in the Western Balkans. Indeed, building trust in digital identity and trust services depends not only on how we use technology, but also how we optimize the processes and products, and how we deal with the entire concept of setting organizational culture by intensive work in change management. So I do think that this webinar will set a path to maybe synchronize the processes in the EU/in the Western Balkan countries. And I'm sure that these inspiring cases may also give us a kind of tendency to standardize further on in the Western Balkans all required processes and all required services in the way it is already being done in the EU. And finally, I'm very much keen to inspire all these change agents that are here today with us, being it speakers and the audiences. And I'm very much like the idea of these webinars because they are not only transfer of know-how, but also they set a platform for networking. So I'm very much pleased to contribute today to this event. Thank you, Jose.
Okay, let me just briefly elaborate a little bit on what Goran and Florian has said already. Now we're seeing a big change in public administrations, not only in the European Union, but also in the Western Balkan region. We're seeing many registers, public registers that are digitalized and interoperable also in the region. We're seeing more and more public services that are offered online, but there is the question of the ID. And the ID is not only to being able to prove to an internet service provider, public or private, that you are yourself who is performing the services. But most of the times, you not only have to prove you are yourself, but you have also to prove some characteristics, some attributes of your personality, which also, by the way, we did in traditional services. I always found a bit weird, like to be able to marry, I had to show my birth certificate, because the civil registry in Spain, they have my birth certificate, so why they ask for it when I want to marry or I want to register my child? And this is happening in the internet. If you allow me, every time we look into the internet in a service, either public or private, we lose control. We don't know how is our identity registered. We don't know if the transactions we do are registered. We don't know how much data of us is actually in the internet and who can access that. So that is why the topic of today is very, very interesting, because e-identity is a building block for digitalization and digital government. Without a sound, secure, easy to use, and user-centric digital identity, public services, digital public services will not flourish. So please, if you have any questions, comments, I advise you to use the chat function. Of course, you all can also raise your hand, but if you write questions in the chat function, myself and Goran, we will try to catch every question and we will pass them to the speakers today and we will try to answer. And also we commit that if we don't have time to answer now in our agenda, we will get back to you by email and we will actually try to answer every question. So I don't want to take more of your time because we have very good experts today. So let me have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Eugenia Nicolos. She works at the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, Nisa. And prior to joining Nisa, Eugenia worked at the Hellenic Authority of Communication, Security and Privacy for over 10 years. And as you are aware, Nisa is doing a great job regarding the e-identity and all these changes is foreseen in the European Union with the European Union wallet. So please, Nisa, you can start the presentation when you want.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, you all. I'm working in the Nisa, which is the EU Cybersecurity Agency for the last 6 years. My name is Eugenia Nicolos, and I am an engineer all those years and working on the telecom area, doing audits. And the last years, I'm working mainly on the IDAS regulations, initially for the trust services and then on the EID part. I will share my screen just to say that Nisa is located in Athens. So the weather here is very nice. I hope you see my presentation now.
Yes, we do see it very clear.
Okay, okay. Let me start. So in this presentation, I will try to shortly overview the NIS activities on the IDAS. I will shortly introduce the digital wallet process, which is led by the European Commission the last year. Then I will go to the main part of this presentation, which is the report on digital identities, self-sovereignty identities that was published in ENISA the last year. And I will close with the conclusions. Just to say what is the context. So ENISA is a cybersecurity agency, and why we're tackling with the IDAS, we have a mandate under the Cybersecurity Act. Cybersecurity Act is the legislation that gives ENISA the power and the mandate to provide capacity build, knowledge, policy, development exercises, and support to the member states of the European Commission. So Article 5 states that ENISA should support the development and implementation of union policy in the field of electronic identity and trust services. So we provide advice, technical guidelines, and we facilitate the exchange of best practice between the component authorities and the member states. So this article was extended, in fact, in 2019 with the EID part, because ENISA since 2014, when the EIDAS was in place, we are publishing a lot of on the area of trust services. And since 2019, we are working quite heavily on the EID part. So the second part of the legislation is the IDAS regulations, which was published in 2014, and mainly Article 19 about the trust services. So Nisa supports the member states with supervision and security measures on trust services, with incident reporting. We have developed a tool called a Serious Tool, where the member states can report incidents and cross-border notifications. We also publish in our website an annual report on trust services incidents, which is public and incorporates all the main incidents, of course, keeping anonymity, which happened in the European member states the previous year. And of course, we also take part in the EID cooperation network of the European Commissions, which handles the EID schemes. It is the EID schemes under EIDAS that each member state should formulate, should design, and then based on a peer review, all the member states and the others through those interoperability gateways should have this broader recognition and used by the citizens. Of course, another part of legislation is the NIS proposal, the Network Information Security proposal, which bring trust services under its umbrella. So also Nisa supports this, let's say, interplay, and supports also the different stakeholders. And of course, the last package, which was mostly related to the today's presentations, is the EIDAS 2 package. The one is the proposal for the EIDAS 2, the regulations, and the second one is the Commission recommendations on the toolbox for the EID wallets. In short, before going into the main part of this presentation, it's what Nisa is doing on the EIDAS, as you can see from 2014. We have grouped the Nisa Article 19 expert group with this constitutes all the supervisory bodies in the European Union that has to do with trust services, with the supervision of trust services. So this is an expert group where we meet 3 times per year, exchange information, experience, and we try to bring the supervisory bodies, which may be ministries, maybe other authorities. So each member state has assigned a supervisory body that is in charge of the other regulations and concerning the trust services. So Nisa's role is to bring the member states together to discuss and exchange information, which is a very useful tool that Nisa handles. So we support the trust services mainly. Since 2014, we have published many reports concerning the trust service provider, the supervisory bodies, also the conformity assessment bodies, which is part of the EIDAS ecosystem. We host the meetings, we provide the secretariat and the serious tool. So there's a lot of work being done there. And of course, the last years after, of course, and also the EIDAS 2 is being published. And also, as being said before, also the COVID has brought a different, speed in digitized services. As they said, it has speed up around 30% the services that was about to be digitized in the future, and it was done in a year. I just have to say that I come from Greece, where we don't have digital identities yet, so I cannot easily use the EIDAS yet, but I hope it could be easy to do in the forthcoming months. So one of the reports we have done lately was also on remote identity proofing, which was really a process how you can prove yourself in order to have access to different services, based also in this period that was difficult for citizens due to the COVID, due to the pandemic, to go to an authority and register. So we have seen how this area is very interesting, how this is an emerging area, and we have done workshops, we have done other studies. And of course, one of the studies that we will present now, I hope the main part, and I hope you're not getting bored because there are some technical details which I would mainly skip and try to concentrate on the more interesting part, is a report on SSI, on self-sovereignty identities, which is distributed identities that the user has the sole control. So let me shortly produce what is the digital wallet process that is introduced by the European Commission. Excuse me, someone has... Sorry? Can I continue?
Yes, please go.
Okay, so I don't know if you're all fully aware that since September last year, the European Commission has launched the digital wallet process. So each European citizens could have a digital wallet where he can store his identity, his driver license, his diploma, either he's a student or a citizen, all the documents that can be stored there digitally, but not only stored, but also used in order to provide access to different services. This is a very aggressive timeline and a very enthusiastic, and a very promising also framework, this European digital wallet process. Which will potentially in the future provide citizens to have online access to all the services, so they can be identified by this wallet. They can use many documents, and they can use also cross-border services, which is the main idea of the IDAS. So, for example, we can register to university to another country without having to be there, and also having your EID stored in this wallet, so you can be identified, use those documents, and be authenticated, and also be able to send those documents that are signed to other countries. So based on the timeline, the European Commission on September 2022 and finally on October 2022 will publish this toolbox, the publication of all those specifications in order to support this wallet. We can be in applications on a mobile phone, on a desktop, which is a very really important use case for the citizens, which can use their financial data, they can use their health data. So there is a broad package of services and use cases that can be used in order to promote online access to services throughout the Europe. So let's now go to the report, which is a digital identity called Leveraging the Self-Sovereign Identity Concept to Build Trust. This was a report, to tell you the truth, that was done in parallel with the IDAS revision last year. So it was a process that Nisa, when it publishes a report, tries to mix up and involve all the stakeholders of the IDAS ecosystem, which are the member states, which is the European Commission. So we don't just write a report, but try to involve all the possible stakeholders. So what is this technology that has emerged for identification? This is called self-sovereign identities. So this technology gives to the identity holder greater control over its identity by adding features which provide a degree of distribution of this identity information. So a user can have multiple decentralized identities and use them in different contexts, depending on what he wants to reveal to third parties. And this technology uses a short term of verifiable credentials. So what is digital identities that you can use across open global systems, provide interoperability? It has to be secure and of course respect the privacy of the European citizens. So the current technology is for federated identities for separate communities with several hierarchies. So the main fact is SSI allows a user to have greater control of his or her own identity. It has some basic elements, which are called DIDs, the decentralized identifiers, and the verifiable credentials. So an identity can be related to different attributes issued by different authorities for different activities. So those verifiable credentials carry other user attributes, for example, age, qualifications, degrees, diplomas, and the user can use part of this information concerning and related to the service he wants to access. For example, if you just go to a supermarket and then you have to prove, let's say, that you are able to buy, or if you go to a bar and you have to prove that you're over 18, you don't have to reveal your whole set of attributes. You can reveal only the set of attributes that give you access to the specific services. So this technology of SSI has different specifications, as you can see here. I will not go deeply into all of them. So it's the W3C specifications, which is a larger system which supports SSI and has drafted a number of standard and technical implementations. Those specifications provide a mechanism to express different sort of credentials, for example, a driver's licenses, a university degrees, a government-issued passports on the web in a way that is cryptographically secure, privacy-respecting, and machine verifiable. So the verifiable credentials, as they're mainly defined under the W3C specifications, a data model, enables the expressions of different education qualifications, healthcare data, financial data, and other sorts of third-party verified, machine-readable personal information on the web. Another, let's say, standard is decentralized identification, or DIF. And a lot of work has been done in the last years under the ISO community and Citizen-centric, which are the standardization bodies. There's a technical committee 307 and Citizen-centric, the Joint Technical Committee 19, which developed standards on blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. We try to cover functional security and interoperability issues. For all these standards, there you can find on the report many useful links where you can find more information. So I use these presentations for you to guide further in the report in case you want to find more things about the ISO 23220 and 19013 version 5. So apart from those standards, there are different communities that they handle SSI issues. So there is Sovereign, Hyperledger, ESIF, and LAC chain. So I will mainly talk a little more about
chain?
the ESIF, which is the European Self-Sovereign Identity Framework. You can find more on the web. You can find more on our report. Their work, which is also taken into account in this wallet process that was last September by the European Commission, and they would try to cover the use case about the diplomas, about the students. This is a part of the European also blockchain service infrastructure to deliver EU-wide cross-border public services using blockchain technology. So ESIF aims to implement a generic SSI capability, allowing users to create and control their own identity across borders without, of course, the need to rely on centralized authorities, which is also the main part of the SSI, not to have a centralized model where an authority will control the user's data, but let the user control his data and reveal the part of attributes that he wants based on the whole context. So let's say in short, what is EIDAS do? What is these digital wallets? This process of the European Commissions, which is also supported by this toolbox. So we have from the one part the EIDAS regulation. And when we say regulation, it means at the moment it will be published, it will be adapted to all member states of the European Commission without any change. So it will be a harmonized framework to be issued by the member states. So all the European citizens will share in a secure way their data and user-friendly and convenient under, of course, the sole control of the user. Also should allow the citizens to electronically identify and authenticate online and offline and across border in case, for example, in an area that is not covered by internet. So you can still use your wallet to access public and private services. So another, let's say, good thing of the EIDAS too is to promote also the private services, since it was assessed that only public services do not have such impact. So letting the user to access also public and private services is a critical add-on. So member states should issue wallets relying on common standards in order to ensure seamless interoperability and have a level of security. And another really critical issue under EIDAS 2 is that the conformity of the wallets to those requirements for interoperability and security should be certified. Certified is that a third party, private or public sector, designated by the member state, this is called CAB, Conformity Assessment Bodies, should really assess that the requirements that the wallet issue a member states comply with the requirements of the IDAS 2. So this wallet is secure and can be used by the citizens. And of course, the most important is that these wallets will ensure the highest level of security for the personal data used for authentication. And either these data are stored locally on the user device, which can be a desktop or a mobile phone, or on cloud-based solutions. So here we can see that when we're running this report, we asked all the member states what are their current, let's say, status. That was done, of course, last year. So we pointed out here some main member states. We have issued SSI and EID wallets initiative: Germany, Spain, the Netherlands, and Poland. Also in this report, we made a survey. So in Germany, the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs since 2019 aimed to develop EIDA solutions, also based on SSI applications. So the first project was called ID Union SSI Project Framework, implements and decentralized public key infrastructure. So determines the rules of its network implementation, and they have also developed their own wallets, Lisi and Status, and other useful things that you can find also on the source as explained in the report. Also Spain released is also first standard defining a reference framework for the management identifications. So Alastria's ID model, which is a non-profit association, has developed a model based on 10 key principles. The principles are grouped by different pillars, mainly security, controllability, and portability. Another, let's say, example is Poland. Poland issued an application called M-Citizens, which can store an ID card, a driver license, a COVID certificate, and e-prescriptions. So it lets citizens since 2018, and it's mostly used during the COVID pandemic. So this COVID pandemic really accelerated a lot this digitization of services. So this application allows the users to download, store, present electronic documents such as an ID card or a driving license, and also transfer these documents, because the user can use a laptop, a mobile phone, or whatever, to transfer these documents between mobile devices. So the application should allow verification and, of course, integrity and authenticity of the electronic documents. That so it's guaranteeing that those documents has not been changed, and they're also authentic by the user that has also access to the phone, and not by a third party penetrating into this system. So as I said, we have involved all the member states in this report. We have asked them some questions. I will not present them here, all of them, but one of the most important topics is security. So SSI has the benefit of having no single point of failure, since it's decentralized and the user has control. Of course, increased demand of the users associated with user code control is worried. Privacy by demand is crucial. And of course, all those attributes should be fresh and need to be maintained. I will not delve into this figure, but this gives an overview of what is a wallet provider that gives a wallet to the citizens, which is a wallet holder. It obtains the wallet, authenticates to the wallets, collects the verifiable data, authenticates. Of course, the holder needs to present those to a line party, which validates the credentials, authenticates the holder. And of course, we have the DID controller, the digitalized identifier, and the verifiable credential issuer. Another main issue of this digital identity framework is the governance. I mean, who governs this area. Since this is decentralized and it's under the control of the user, who governs and oversees the operations of the SSI service providers, and who set the rules in order to assure that they respect security, privacy, interoperability points of view. So conformity assessment of the provider against the assurance rule is a must. And also ISO and Citizen-centric are developing standards for managing trust around SSI with working drafts looking, of course, at the trust anchors. Of course, the wallet can be implemented using SSI and other technology. So user has the sole control of the wallet, can decide whether to use any particular wallet, as well as select particular identifiers or verifiable credentials to authenticate to a line party. Of course, the security of this wallet, as it's now a main part during the conversations of the European Commission, and in fact, Nisa supports this process by conducting, let's say, the risk assessment, so we can identify what are the assets of the wallets, what are the risks, what are the threats, and of course, it's connected to both software and hardware environment. And of course, the security of the wallet will need to be certified against specific criteria. So to give assurance that the wallet that European citizens use is secured and the user has a sole control of it, and cannot this information be leaked to other parties and used by third parties to provide that they are a fake user. And of course, interdependence, so cannot be done in isolations. Both the controller and verifiable conditions should be authenticated and used in a well and secure way. So Nisa's main role is to assess the risks. What are the risks? What are the security measures to help the member states identify what are the threats and what needs to be implemented. So in the last part of this report, we try to identify the assets of this SSI ecosystem. What are the processes, the data, and the risks. I will not go through all of this procedure that is explained in the report, but I will try to focus on the three main security measures, which are data minimization for the user. So partial release of user attributes for the purpose of data minimization. So the user should be aware that he has the control, so he has to use it in a proper way. So also unlinkability of transactions at the protocol level or cryptographic protocol. So each transaction which is unique and cannot be linked together. Use only identifiers that are required to establish necessary linkability. And of course, pseudonyms, a form of identifiers that avoid using the same unique identifier for a user in all each transaction. So a user should not be known for all the transactions. He can use domain-specific identifiers or pseudonyms. The second basic another area is consignment choice. So the user through this SSI and the wallet environment should have control of his data. So he should know what each action should bring about, should have the also should be given his consent. So they can exert informed consent whether the holder attributes are managed and used by a wallet or in another entity.
Thank you, Eugenia. You
Okay.
can continue. I'm sorry for...
Yes. No problem. No. So just to sum up, what are the main conclusions? So SSI and privacy. So SSI can provide an effective basis for digital identities that protect the privacy. So decentralized digital identities that can be used to support the pseudonyms from privacy. So verifiable credentials can separate the private attributes from the digital identities. So the user selects which attributes to be revealed to third parties. And of course, cryptographic separation between transactions in a wallet with separate identity documents from different controllers. So help avoid links between the separate transactions, which is really a basic thing for privacy. Concerning the governance of SSI, of these self-sovereign identities, is the certifications. So to certify, I guess, specific rules concerning mainly security, to audit and oversee the digitalized controllers, verifiable credentials and the registries, and all the above are independent. So it will be properly governed, the whole this whole ecosystem. And of course, the last is security. So the risks of this architecture should be considered, and the following key measures need to be implemented. Those was part of this report, but it belonged also to a broader part about the digital wallets. So data minimization, only use necessary data. Consent and choice, so the user should be fully aware of the process, of the full functionality of the wallet, should have its choice and his consent in all the actions. And of course, accuracy and quality. All parties can trust identifications data stored and provided by the wallet. And last but not least, we organize every year as a Nisa Trust Services Forum, which dates, this is going to be the 8th edition of the forum, where we bring the different stakeholders to discuss in the beginning only the trust services, which was the main part, but now all the trade is digital identities and the digital wallets, and this year is also quite promising. So we organized it in October 22 in Berlin, along with another event. So these are the main conclusions of this report. This is the main, let's say, drivers for the users, and now we are also now in the process of specifying the requirements of the digital wallets used by the European citizens. Thanks for inviting us to this webinar and presenting this report. I hope you find it helpful, and hope through the report you find some pointers so you can go further reading or focus on a specific area. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenia, for your very, very interesting presentation. I have the opportunity of reading the report, which is actually very, very enlightening. So please, if anyone in the audience have a question, we have a few minutes before our next presentation. So if anyone has a question, please pop in.
If you allow me, Jose, I'd like to pose the question. Evgenia, thank you very much for this very inspiring presentation. And as non-technical person, I love the way you explained very specific and comprehensive technical issues. So going back from one of the most important conclusions that reflects privacy and SSI, would you please be able to give us a perspective explaining all the self-sovereign identities model where the users manage their own identity, how it is going to be handled for the children or people with disabilities or elderly people who do not have the possibility to handle on their own the keys? And so did you consider that, and what is the level of aspect of accessibility, in particularly for the people with disabilities?
Yes, that's a very nice question. And of course, it will not be obligatory all of the citizens to use the wallets. So it will not something that will, after these wallets or SSI or any other decentralized solutions come into effect, that the people with disabilities or the elderly people that cannot, use the technology, so they will not be obligatory. So the people will have the right to choose whether they can use their mobile phone, their desktop, or other services, or go to an authority that could help them to make those transactions. This is a point that, of course, it has to be easy to work, so user-friendly environment, easy to use. And of course, not everybody is aware of the concept of consent, to give consent to something to be done, what it means. I think it's even a word that cannot be easily understood by many people. So yes, this is easy for people on the technological, let's say, side, or for the children. I think the children are more easily to adapt to any technology. Of course, the wallets is another question, very interesting, at what age, I mean, they could use. They could use when they have an ID, which means from 12 years old, they have their wallet and they use it to access services, or it also can be used under the guidance of the parents. So I don't have replies to these interesting questions. I think because now at this moment, let's say the framework is most on the security and functionality and interoperability. But I think this is very nice, questions to be, handled during now that the European Commission handles some pilots. So during the summer, some pilot project will be implemented. And when we talk about cross-border and user-friendly, and all citizens should have the same, access and rights, we should think about those things as well.
Thank you, Eugenia. You did answer to my next question, to which extent there is a probability that SSI may replace other technologies in subject, but you did say that it will set a path towards, to a certain extent, to the users. Another perspective which raised my attention was cross-border cooperation for accessing online services. You did discuss about security and confirmed that it is absolutely secure. On the other side, governance issues is something that is very much important to focus on, and interdependence. Having in mind that at least two entities need to cooperate in the governing issues, how is this resolved, and to which extent this still represents a challenge to set sustainability and to actually reflect what SSI offers? Trusts and secure system for accessing services?
For the time being, let's say the main implementation at the European level is from the ESIF initiative, the European Self-Sovereignty Identity Framework, which has different nodes in order to provide interoperability across the member states. So there are many member states having these nodes to offer this interoperability. And of course, they will share, let's say, their experience at the moment under the diploma use case of the European Commission. So this, let's say, SSI paradigm and framework will be used for the diploma wallets, for the students for the time being. And then the European Commission will assess different solutions because EIDAS, as in the past, was technological neutral. You cannot impose, let's say, one solution for all. And this brings more problems, of course, to the governance level. Since, of course, no matter which choice you may take, it has to be according to some security and interoperability rules. So let's see, it will be quite interesting to see the next years how this will all evolve and how users can use different wallets provided by different providers to access those services online in a very convenient and easy way.
Thank you very much, Eugenia. I don't know if we have any other questions from the audience.
I see Kaido has a question. So please, Kaido.
Thank you, Jose, and good to see you and all Sigma colleagues and also colleagues from the region. And thanks, Eugenia, for a really interesting and promising presentation. And I understand that your focus probably now is on EU member state, but technically, or do you foresee that this same platform can be also extended to the countries outside the EU, especially the candidate countries? Especially considering that many of them are already kind of aligning their legislation to EIDAS and so on. So what are your plans in this respect? Thank you.
Look, first, just to say that Nisa is not the European Commission, so we handle cybersecurity issues. So we don't make the regulations of the EIDAS, but we support in this implementation. And particularly under the expert group that Nisa has established, Article 19, we also have invited EFTA, EA, and candidate countries to take part. So the supervisories are there to exchange information. So when they finish the process to be already in and have the knowledge, and they can build this interoperability. So as Nisa, we are open to all candidate countries to become members of this expert group to exchange information. Concerning now, let's say the formal adoption, it's part of the European Commission and the EIDAS regulations. So let's say it's at a different political level. So political and technology levels, you know, sometimes they're not at the same meeting point. But of course, on the technical point, we invite all the member states and all the candidate countries to take part in the trust services discussions about security and interoperability.
Thanks, thanks, Eugenia, for your very, very interesting presentation and for giving us a glimpse and also user-friendly presentation of the Nisa report. And we don't have time for more questions now, but I'm sure the audience, people have questions of how these e-wallets are going to work, how this minimalization principle of information is going to be implemented. So if I get some more questions from the audience, I will get back to you by email. And thanks a lot for being here today with us.
Thanks for the invitation. Thank you very much.
So now we're perfectly on time and we're moving to our next speakers. They are Pranvera colleagues from RCC, Pranvera Castrati and Tanya Maras. I think you don't need presentation from my side about what is RCC or the great work RCC does for the region, but just let me briefly tell you that RCC has just published a very, very interesting report that I had the opportunity to read it in the last weeks, is about regional interoperability and trust services in the Western Balkans. So I don't want to take any of their time because their presentation is gonna be very, very interesting. So please, Tanya, Pranvera, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation and warm greetings from Sarajevo. Although the weather here is not, it's rainy and cloudy, but of course our positive energy can be transmitted despite the weather. We're very pleased indeed to address this webinar and to share with you our, let's say, experience and also work related to interoperability, regional interoperability and trust services. Just before I start with the presentation, I would like just to say a couple of words of what RCC is. So RCC is a regionally owned and led cooperation framework that enables the stronger dialogue and cooperation among the Southeast Cooperation process participants, and in particular helps the Western Balkan economies to further integrate and increase the synergies with the EU single market. In order for us to put the whole discussion into a context, we'd like to brief you before we go to the report on a few background information and context of how the whole work on interoperability and trust services is guided in the work of the Western Balkans. I'm sure that everyone knows that from November 2020, there is the Common Regional Market agenda that has been endorsed by the leaders of the Western Balkans, that sets forth the ambition and the vision for an enhanced cooperation within the Western Balkans, and builds on the 4 freedoms of the EU, and it is further strengthened and enhanced with measures that are very interrelated, and these are those under the regional digital area, regional innovation area, industry and supply chains. As part of the regional digital area that aims to integrate the Western Balkans into the pan-European digital area, as part of the digital economy, regional interoperability and trust services have a distinct focus, and this sets for the ambition of the Western Balkans to enable the recognition of e-signature and other forms of EIDs and trust services based on the and following the relevant EU acquis. And in addition to this, also there are measures that economies have agreed to follow in regard to the minimum technical standards and specifications that would allow the exchange of documents. Furthermore, the Western Balkans have already established and have a flagship event, the flagship event for the digital transformation in the Western Balkans, which is the Western Balkan Digital Summits, that this year, for the 5th year in a row, will be organized, is hosted by one of the Western Balkan economies, and it is supported by the RCC, and the Western Balkan Digital Summit, through its conclusions and the work from one summit to another, has put a great emphasis to the interoperability and the trust services. There is already in place a memorandum of understanding that the Western Balkan economies have signed during the Digital Summit 2020 that sets the basis for the analysis of the report that we have published and the work towards which the Western Balkan economies are working. Furthermore, we have facilitated a process in RCC and have prepared the regional study on interoperability and trust services, in which vision planning and the prospects for piloting has been put forward, and this report is already publicly available in the RCC website. As it was also mentioned from the previous speaker, there are EU member states that are really leading in the area, and we are supporting RCC by an Estonian team who are trying to implement and trying to introduce the vision and the work that Estonia has done in this regard within our work. Last but not least, we also try to support the economies with dedicated on-demand support, and we are very pleased that until now 3 economies have already asked for dedicated support in regard to the trust services and EIDAS, in particular North Macedonia on EIDAS node, Montenegro on standards compliant with EIDAS and related specifications to be implemented, while Bosnia-Herzegovina is in a process of, let's say, defining the tasks and activities in this regard, which in a way goes in line with the ambitions we have. Before going to the details of the report, I also would like to inform the audience that on 8th and 9th of June, EU Western Balkan regulatory dialogue will be launched, and that regulatory dialogue aims at enabling a strengthened and enhanced dialogue between the EU institutions and the Western Balkan institutions on all related Chapter 10 of EU acquis elements, and European Digital Identity, Cybersecurity and Nisa Directive, Data Governance Act are also part of the dialogue that will start from June. So now going to the report that started preparation on 2020, and of course it took quite some time to do the assessment, which first started with the assessment of regional readiness for implementation of EIDAS, but also interoperability readiness at the level of 6 economies, and that was built a bit further with let's say detailed assessment for each economy, and you can find detailed analysis for each economy within the report. The vision that this report sets forth is interoperable Western Balkan, a fully interoperable region, which aims at bringing together all Western Balkan economies into the same pace and speed of development in the area of interoperability and trust services. And for us, and for what the the report itself introduces and portrays the interoperable Western Balkans means that EID and trust services are mutually recognized in the region, which also aims at let's say, improving further and enabling cross-border service delivery and recognition of the EIDs and trust services across the region would, in a way, support the whole work. But this, at the same time, we should not forget that everything we do at the regional level has to start from the economy level, and this means that for the EIDs and trust services to be mutually recognized at the level of 6, it means that Western Balkans themselves should have established nationally recognized ID schemes, and these schemes are fully compliant with IDAS, which to a certain extent also sets the speed and the ambition of work in each of the Western Balkan economies. The follow-up ambition as part of the report is that public and private services, and we could tell also from the Eugenia presentation that not only public services but also private services should be accessible via recognized EID schemas, and the actions and the activities defined in the report also aim towards achievement of this ambition, which means that the nationally recognized EID schemas are at some point mandatory to be accepted by all public entities. Of course, there are well-defined, easy to go and easy to use ID schemas at the user's environment. The application or recognition of the EIDAS qualified e-signature is from all public entities is another way forward to ensure the regional interoperability and also to facilitate the free movement of services across the Western Balkans. And this also builds upon Goran's question on how this, in a way, helps the citizens and how the citizens will be using it. In particular, when you define the applications or when you define either desktop or mobile applications that the end users have to use. And the ambition here is that you have easy to get and easy to use applications for the users while you try to enable their skills, despite IDAS being technology neutral, but still the required skills sometimes to use those applications are to be carefully considered by the public institutions through different activities and works. Following to this logic and following the intention, the ambition to have a cross-border document, let's say, movement or recognized in the region, it is also part of the elements that the report elaborates further is to have interconnected operational and interconnected platforms at each economy, which would make possible for different platforms to share data among them so that they can create the platform that could then easily be transformed into platforms that can be cross-border then also used, and the services could be in that regard also cross-border, let's say, recognized. And last but not least is only one principle widely introduced, which would be of benefit of all citizens and businesses across the region. So what the report itself aims to, and what are the steps that we are undergoing, given that there are many challenges ahead, and these challenges are also very much related to the different stage of development we have and different stage of EU integration process we are undergoing. However, through the actions of this of the report and what the report itself defines, we aim to have at least one, but even more depending on the developments in each economy, a cross-border use case offered to businesses and citizens that would showcase and would bring clearance on how easy it is to kind of use those services across border. And in order for us to do this, let's say a whole set of discussions at the economy level, but also at the regional level is currently ongoing. So the other expected result from this report is that economy level issued ID schemas are recognized within the Western Balkans following the ID schemas recognition in EU, which makes us, of course, not similar to EU, but at least tries to prepare the Western Balkans to get closer and to learn from the peers in EU and get from the best practices that this process of EID schema recognition in EU is bringing at EU level to the citizens. This would, to a certain extent, while working at the regional level, would prepare us to negotiate with EU on this recognition of economy level, economy ID schemas issued. And while learning to how to have this recognized at the regional level, of course, we will have better arguments, but also better knowledge and capacities to go further in a process which is much more demanding. Trust list mutually recognized within the Western Balkans, of course, compliant with Article 14 of the IDAS regulation, which requires at the same time that the Western Balkan economies are fully compliant with IDAS regulation, but they also have the capacities to enforce it. And this, of course, will make the region better prepared to negotiate with the EU in regard to the recognition of trust list. So this is just as an illustrative, let's say, chart from the report that sets the complexity of work and complexity of actions and mainstreams of work at the regional level. We have to say, though, that this timeline is a bit delayed to the initial ambition we had in terms of implementation. However, it is, let's say, worth saying that the wholeness of addressing this topic at the regional level through interoperability for cross-border boundary services, for EID notifications, but also trust list recognition at the Western Balkan would set the scene for the follow-up actions. And again, just to show the complexity of what the economies are required to do and what are the different components that each economy needs to comply with or needs to work on, so that we have the vision, let's say, accomplished on interoperable Western Balkans. You see that there are different components that we are trying to address at the economy level, as I said, through the on-demand support, in some cases with EIDAS note, in some cases with technical standards and specifications, while advancing even more with the cross-border use cases, and I'll explain why. So, as an illustration to the interaction between different components at the economy level at different layers, at different complexity, it tells that unless the whole machine works in an integrated manner, the interoperability at the regional level would not bring results, and of course will not be able to see the free movement of services with, let's say, easy platforms, or better saying, with standardized procedures when it comes to the cross-border movement of services. But we have, despite putting the vision for the regional interoperability and trust services, and in the process of implementation, we have faced different challenges. And this is why, jointly with the Western Balkan economies, we have tried to define the best way forward. Just to give you some of the considerations on the challenges ahead in this area. So we are, and this is a known fact that we are at a different pace of integration, and this means that we have varied policy objectives at economy level, which might, in a way, create a disbalanced advancement in regard to the regional interoperability. Also, the level of EU key alignment being a prerequisite for inclusive regional actions is also another challenge. And we have the economies, in particular when it comes to the eIDAS regulation, not all of them are fully compliant. Some of them are at the advanced level, and some other are starting to advance in the alignment with EU acquis. In terms of interoperability platforms and user environments, again, we are at different stages. Just to illustrate what I mean, the 2021 the report produced by European Commission on e-government benchmark report, sorry, shows that the overall e-government maturity in the Western Balkans is not yet at the level desired. So in Serbia, this is at the 50%, and in Albania, 47%, being, the economies who have progressed the most in this regard, while the availability of services is higher than this e-government maturity, but still below the EU average, which is at the 81%, while in the region it varies from 70% to 44%. But what is more, let's say, worrisome in regard to the cross-border interoperability is that yet the availability of these online services for cross-border use is not very high, which tells us, in a way charted and also inspired and guided the way out the Western Balkan economies are having in this regard while working in parallel work streams. But while seeing this, and while also building on comments and points made from previous speakers, the trust in the digital platforms is an issue. And we have an annual survey, which is a public opinion survey and business opinion survey, Balkan Barometer. Balkan Barometer 2021 shows, for instance, that despite the advancements in e-government, in Albania, for instance, the services will be fully online within 2023, which means that the availability of these services and the advancement in the interoperability is really high. However, the citizens, only 9% of them are using the government services, which either tells that they have still skill gaps, or the trust in the system and in the platforms is not that high. So the same data of Balkan Barometer 2021 shows that 37% of the respondents have concerns in using the digital platforms because their data might be misused. So this also tells the interrelation between what the whole work on interoperability and recognition of eID schemas and trust services brings to the citizens, but at the same time security that Eugenia also mentioned before. So go next. What we did at the operational level in order for us to meet the ambition of this report and start implementation of the actions. We have already, let's say, 3 regional working groups or platforms in place that meet regularly and discuss on main elements and components of the report. And the very next decision or let's say way out to kind of balance this differentiated or varied level and uneven level of development at the economies is to pilot cross-border use cases for certain services that could be of use for the citizens and for businesses, while having in mind the principles of easy to use, let's say, a high impact on the users, but at the same time improving the overall service delivery for them whenever not traveling. So when doing cross-border, trying to do cross-border what they need to, either be it an application or diploma recognition and so on and so forth. So this is just as an illustration of the types of use cases that we are discussing as part of the report and the working group. And you see that the variety of potential piloting cases is huge, but of course it will depend at the end of what is feasible and what is achievable at the level of Western Balkan economies, but if not possible at the level of all inclusive Western Balkan economies, to what extent it is possible with fewer countries. And our very next step is to agree on this huge variety of potential piloting cases, at least to have one of two of these use cases that would be implemented widely in the region. And this will be also possible through follow-up preparation of technical specifications and prototypes to be used, while engaging in very practical solutions with no binding approaches, but with the overall understanding that this will bring benefits to the economies. And this goes without saying that also one of the barriers that we might face in the region is the mindset. So paper-based mindset culture of the work of public institutions, which of course is changing, but increasing the awareness and showing the results while putting the whole efforts into an evidence-based confidence-building approach would for sure bring these use cases let's say, to reality and compliant with EU standards. We are very pleased that in whole this process we have been supported widely by DigiNear and DigiConnect, and we were very pleased also to see during our last meeting at the regional level in April that we were quite in line with the approach used by the Commission when it comes to the use cases, and what we also heard from Eugenia today. This is also an approach that EU member states are using widely at EU level. For all of you who would like to, follow and let's say get all the details of the report for each economy, this is available in our website, at the RCC website. But if you have any questions, even after this panel and webinar, please address us, and jointly me and Tanya would be happy to respond. We simply didn't split the presentation, despite that was jointly prepared, just for the economy of time and also to comply with the time, let's say, assigned to this presentation. Thank you very much for all your attention, and looking forward to any question.
Dear colleagues, thank you for your presentation. You are perfectly on time, and being on time, you still have managed to present a very huge amount of useful information, not only the diagnosis, not only what is happening in the Western Balkans, but also the challenges and the next steps, which is very important. I would like to point out some of your words, like, of course, interoperability is key. Without interoperability, public services will not flourish. The once-only principle will not work. You cannot digitize red tape. A few years ago, I had to register my kid in one school, and I had to sign the same document, e-sign it 7 times. It was a private school. It was not public sector. So we civil servants, this time we were not the guilty of doing things wrong, but the private sector. Because it was before 3 years old. It was really kindergarten for very little. And of course, the trust. Trust is a problem. And it's a problem especially not only in the state, but also in service providers, because now users' data is stored by many very different public, but many private providers. So also your suggested line of work in the EID, in complying with EIDAS, in ensuring security and data privacy are definitely key steps for the region to align with European standards, and not only to align with European standards, but to thrive in digital services and digital government. So if any in the audience has a question, please raise your hand. Yes, please, Goran.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Pranavera and Tanya, for this very interesting presentation. And I really aspire what RCC does. Indeed, this very dynamic presentation, including so many things. And my attention was really attached to the whole of society approach. I would leave the phrase whole of government, because you do include theoretical and empirical knowledge to the vast extent, not only to remember on this important regional study on interoperability and trust services, and also perception received by annual Balkan barometer, but you're also entering into very exciting zone of piloting. So knowing that still there is so many things that are being needed to be done in terms to secure the interoperable framework for cross-border piloting, how you're going to deal besides technological solutions, which we understood very well what you're going to tackle, and this action plan is more than clear. But I'm very much interested in this piloting because, Pranavera, you mentioned that there is a need to work on the mindset of the governments. So how will you address all these constitutive elements that are actually bringing in the state of maturity of the institutions, being it either increasing the human capital and actually enforcing the skills and knowledge in subject area, towards the policy design and coordination, and the last but not least, monitoring and evaluation, so quality assurance, which is very much important, because finally we would expect that there is a raise of satisfaction of both employees and the clients.
Thank you, Goran. Indeed, despite we are an intergovernmental institution, I mean, and although this is not phrased as such, but our whole society approach and consumer-centric and citizen-centric approach is at the core of what we do. Of course, we don't let aside here businesses who are the engine of economic growth. However, for us, the well-being of the citizens and trying to provide better services to them is what matters the most. Of course, this is not the only area that we in RCC work, and there are, let's say, several parallel work streams that would contribute and would in a way complement the work that we are doing in the area of interoperability. For instance, we are now trying to assess the skills of the public administration, both at central and at the local level, on their digital skills, so that they can provide better services to the end users, and also can support a better policy making process when it comes to the e-services. Second, we organize regularly peer-to-peer learning, let's say, events, and networking with different institutions in the Western Balkans for them to showcase the best practices. And we have done this regularly through the Digital Summit, but we will start now as well to do it through dedicated e-government services networking or gathering. In terms of the mindset, of course, the process that we are doing as part of this report is to a great extent let's say, fighting or challenging the mindset or the paper-based mindset. And this is through the discussion, the open discussion with all institutions involved, but at the same time, while showing them very concrete examples, in this case from Estonia, most, let's say, prominently, on how this mindset change could benefit. And last but not least, given that exchanging the documents is one side of the story, but exchanging data is where we really aim at, and not necessarily exchanging the documents would bring, let's say, the most tangible results. Of course, it will, but while working on a free flow of data, within the region, this would bring the whole interoperability at a different level and a new layer. And for this, both personal and non-personal data storage, processing, and sharing is under consideration, and a framework has been already prepared jointly with all, let's say, responsible institutions for e-government services and for e-platforms in the Western Balkans. So there are several avenues that we work for it, and also we will also dedicate to targeted groups, and those being vulnerable groups, elder, Roma, and also economic partners like women in particular. We'll try to support through mentorship programs to address their needs, in particular when it comes to interoperability and skills to comply and to apply the e-services offered by the governments.
Thank you, Pernavera, and thank you also to the RCC for being brave to invest and experiment, because the failure culture is something that we hugely miss worldwide, not only in the Western Balkans. And I really like the idea of piloting, going towards the movements, and then hopefully standardizing for the entire region the processes in domain of interoperability and trust services. I will end up here with my questions to my dear colleagues from the RCC, and maybe we have another questions from the audience before we have the other speaker.
Yes, please, Kaido, you can ask your question.
So I'm going to continue our double act with Goran and ask the second question. Thanks a lot for this interesting presentation. It's really nice to see that you're working on this cross-border interoperability in the region. But I have a question. I don't know if you have studied this in detail or not. My main question, if it comes to interoperability in the region, is related to trust services. Sigma monitoring assessments have shown that even though the digital signatures and identification have been in place for many years in most administrations in the Western Balkans, but still the uptake is very slow, especially if you look at the individual level, not the businesses. So you may end up in a situation that you have interoperable services available, but there is no one to use them, because people are not just using digital identities. And it's not just Sigma monitoring assessments. I'm currently working with RESPA on a project related to human resources management information systems in the public administration. And it's interesting to see that our preliminary findings show that even the government institutions don't trust their own trust services, because HRMISs are not actually using those EID or digital signature features that are supported by its own government. So what is your take on this? How this interoperable regional services are going to be used if there is no uptake on digital identity? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaido, for this question. Indeed, we have looked upon the study you mentioned, and we also check regularly on OECD Sigma reports and monitoring reports in this regard, as well as the related reports that RESPA is doing, in particular to the public administration capacities to handle interoperability and the overall trust service recognition. My answer to your question would be that this is a time-bound exercise. This is not an overnight, let's say, result, and we can tell this, also from the EU member states in many aspects, not just regional, not just interoperability of trust services. So it will be, bit by bit and step by step. It will not be built over time. So what we have as a response is we continuously and in a very consistent manner try to address the needs, be it those for the citizens, be it those for to adjust systems, or to increase awareness, or to inform people how to adjust to these new realities of digitalization. But of course, it is not something that we can give a response overnight and achieve results. But we are consistently working to make all the puzzles and bring all the puzzles together and try to make this work one versus the other, in a timely manner. How much time this will take, I cannot say, but we are committed to be persistent and to address all related elements and partner with other organizations who do and are specialized in doing these jobs that would bring greater synergies and avoidance of duplication in the region.
Thanks a lot, Pramber. I really like your view. I really share your point of view. We have to iterate. We have to start with pilot projects, small projects, getting people involved, getting citizens accustomed to use the ID. And of course, we have to invest in all this, what is called non-sexy work of building blocks, of platforms, digitizing registries, avoiding mistakes in registries, and engaging with the citizens who are most likely to use the services. I could mention really good examples in the region, like in Serbia, the baby project, or in Montenegro, the registration in University of Montenegro, which has a great digital uptake. Now, and in real life, the student can see if he or she is going to be admitted in the university or not, if he or she is below the threshold line. And I could mention examples in every public administration in the region, but I don't want to be too long. So just thanks a lot for your work. And definitely, I think RCC is a key player in helping Western Balkan public administrations in digitizing and in promoting trust services and digital ID.
Thank you very much for inviting, and please, for any additional interest, questions, do not hesitate to write us, and looking forward to have other similar webinars and avenues of cooperation. Thanks a lot.
So now we move to our next speaker, which is Mr. Dr. Rafbuil, sorry, who will present very, very interesting project, because we will see self-sovereign identity in action by the Flemish government in Belgium. Like, they have this very, very interesting project where the people will own the data, not the corporations will own the data, but the people will own the data. So please, Raf, the floor is yours.
Hello, Jose. Thank you for the kind introduction. I see that I don't have the ability to share my screen or my presentation.
Just a second, I'm gonna make you co-host in a second.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, now you should be able to share your screen.
Yes, I am. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, perfect and clear.
Okay, thank you for your invitation and for the opportunity to share the digital transformation strategy of the region of Flanders in Belgium. And the focus of this presentation is, of course, on self-sovereign identity. So in Flanders, we've been investing the past decades in biotech and in health tech. But now, when in the context of the COVID resilient plan, we are focusing on data tech, and this in close collaboration with our Flemish universities. Now, the focus of this plan is to lower the barriers both for companies as well as government administrations to participate and fully exploit the potential of the digital economy. Now, therefore, we are investing in data utilities. Now, the past decades, we have been investing in, as government, in gas and electricity, and even the past millennia, we've been investing in, as governments, in water as a utility. And we've seen that those utilities are very important and they are cornerstones of a more sustainable society. We've seen it in the old Rome that had the potential to grow to a city of a capacity of 1 million inhabitants, where other cities like London and Firenze, they had a tipping point in the Middle Ages of 100,000 inhabitants because they were lacking good utilities. And now we are investing in data utilities. Now, if we talk about data utilities, then we're not talking about copper wires or glass fibers, but we're investing in the layer on top of it. So in the context of the European policy, it's investing in data spaces. So to enable that data can flow, because we know if data starts to flow and if data becomes interoperable, there will be more data and there will be more innovation. Now, problems that we see today is that we have no sockets for data, not like electricity, which is standardized and can easily plugged in. So in Flanders, we have since a decade since an interoperability program, but we would like to broaden it also to the private sector. Second hurdle we see is the fear of losing control over data, and also a lack of trust between parties when sharing data. Now, in order to provide better interoperable services to citizens, organizations, and companies, in 2015, we started up an initiative which is called the Flemish Citizen Profile. It's now, since several years, online, and all citizens, they can connect to their citizen profile, and they can see all the interactions that they have with the government, and also they can have an insight in their data. Now, citizens, they can log on secure using EID, which is connected via the federal services, federal authentication services to ADAS, and also they can use a mobile app to sign on to the citizen profile. And we apply a no wrong door policy. So you can access it via the website of your local government or any of the websites of the regional government. This means that I can get my birth certificate in the city of Ghent, even if I'm not a citizen of Ghent. So really no wrong door. And this connects to our Crossroads databases and to local implementations of the different cities and municipalities in Flanders. Now, the aim from day one is not only to give citizens insights of their the government data, such as their diploma, but to enable them to reuse it in other contexts, because we don't want to share PDF documents or paper. We would like to share data and enable citizens to take full control. Now, there were some hurdles because we are already sharing a lot of data. We have a decentralized system since, I think, since 2010 in the region of Flanders, where all governments and all cities and municipalities are connected, both for classical services as applying for a subsidy or even to enter a low emission zone. So this is our implementation of once only. So we don't have to ask information to citizens that the government already has. But this system is based on laws and decrees and sharing data via service integrators within the government. When we saw, or when we would like to enable citizens to share their data outside of the government or in a public private context, there we had no legislation, and it was very hard to empower them to reuse their data in other contexts. For instance, the example that was also given by the other speakers, sharing their diploma, for instance, with their future employer. But also we are facing similar challenges within the private sector, because often when we think about silos, we think about the legacy of some e-government systems and pizza boxes in the basement. But this is what new silos look like. I give you an example. And the example is in the context where we see that the borders between public and private services are blurring very fast. For instance, within the context of Green Deal, we're working on shared mobility in Flanders. And if I would like to travel from point A to point F using a shared car, public transport, for instance, a bus, and a shared bike, then I would like my data to follow me, because otherwise I have to log on to all the different systems, explaining my preferences, proving that I have a driver's license for some of the modi, prove in some contexts sharing that I have a handicap or that I am allowed to have a reduction. And that causes a real start-stop effect. So in this context, we would like that our data is interoperable and can follow us when we are traveling and using shared mobility. It's not only an advantage for me as a citizen when I'm commuting, but also for the companies, because managing data, it comes at a cost. You have a high liability. For instance, we had in the past problems with fake driver's license and cars that got crashed. And so there also, we would like to lower the barriers for companies to work with personal data in a GDPR compliant context. So late 2017, early 2018, we started working together with Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented over 30 years ago the World Wide Web. And we can't imagine us living today without the existence of the World Wide Web. Now, if we look back more than 30 years ago, the World Wide Web was rather a process innovation than a technological innovation. The idea was that any browser could connect to any server viewing a standardized web page, and that we also could provide links between the web pages without having a physical handshake between the owner of the web pages using hyperlinks. So the whole idea of the web was based on standardization. Now, Sir Tim started working, I think, in 2017 on a course correction to empower citizens and users to gain control again of their own data. And the concept is similar. It's the idea of working using standards and providing every user with a data vault, which is called a pod. And it's like an online memory stick, which contained structured data. So no PDFs, but data in line with the standards, core vocabularies of Interoperable Europe and standards of W3C. And the idea that any application if you give access, can connect to any pod, giving fine-grained access to that application or revoking it when you don't want to use it anymore. So the idea is a real shift where we are now in a context where data is controlled by companies. They are in a rat race of gathering as much data as they can, but we see now in Europe that there's a legal ceiling within the context of GDPR. And then we want a shift to get citizens again in control of their data. Because we have two problems. The first one is that we have a privacy problem within the context of GDPR. So companies are reusing our data. We accept yes on certain cookies because we would like to use the service, and we use control. But also we have an innovation problem, because GDPR helps us to protect our privacy, but we also want portability. If I don't like to use an application anymore, then I would like to cut the connection and to revoke to revoke the consent, so they can't use my data anymore. But when I would like to connect to another application, then I want my comfort again and share again my data. And this is where the data vault or pod comes into place, because data is in my vault. I can share the data with another application. And in the context of shared mobility, this could mean that I connect to a new mobility provider and share part of my history or the data they need to drive a car without the effort of sharing the data over and over, and without the risk of being in a vendor lock-in. So there we have a shift where companies can focus on their added value instead of focusing on collecting our data. And the idea is, on the left-hand side, we have many of the applications today where the data is locked in the applications, not following the standards, so not interoperable and not portable. And the shift to, on the right hand, data stored in my online memory stick, where I am in control and I can give fine-grained access. Now, this concept is called SOLID. SOLID is not a technology, but it's a protocol, just like the protocols of the World Wide Web, which built on standards that exist for over 20 years. So the use cases that we now have in test, one of them is the use case of diploma. We already have authentic sources connected to our universities, which are authentic sources or base registries of our diplomas. And citizens, they can get a structured copy of their diploma following European standards within their data vault or pod, and they can share it with with anybody, so also with private partners, their future employer. And because it's not a PDF document, because with a PDF document or a sheet of paper you share any data forever, it's structured data, so they can decide which part of the data they would like to share and for how long, or they can even, using verifiable credential, opt to just share the fact that they have a master diploma without sharing their data. Now the focus in our strategy is on interoperability. We started up our interoperability program, Open Standards for Linked Organizations, 10 years ago, in close collaboration with ISA Square, now Interoperable Europe, where we have been focusing on technical and semantical interoperability. So this means that at this moment in the region of Flanders, we have data dictionaries in 123 domains, which are machine readable. This means that if somebody would like to read the data of addresses or my personal data, and I give access, also people from outside Flanders would be able to read the data because it builds upon international standards. And also it connects all the standards horizontally. So we get a knowledge graph, which helps us to share data across data spaces. So if you would like to have shared mobility, but you would like to combine it with information to go cycling where there is a better air quality, you can connect it to environmental data because the standards, they link to each other. Also, we have been focusing on ecosystems a lot. This is on the level of the organizational interoperability, and later on I will delineate on the fact that we created new legislation in order to let the data able to flow between public and private sector. Now, for a long time, we have been a service integrator as Digital Flanders, which is a government administration focusing on the digital transformation of governments and also important societal challenges. But we see that there are a lot of hurdles when it comes to sharing data in a public-private context, and also to enable companies to participate in the data economy. And therefore we are starting up the data utility company, which focusing on the digital transformation of society as a whole. And the data utility company will be there by the end of this year. We already went to the parliament and we've created new legislation, which is now being ratified. So the focus of the Flemish data utility company is to empower citizens to get in control of their data again, give them more privacy, but also more innovation, because they can share their data and more hyper-personalized services will arise. We have now a fully operational infrastructure for the pods, for the data vaults built on the Solids protocol. And also we started up ecosystems, collaborating with private companies, governments and academia as well, to create sustainable ecosystems around data. And of course, it's not about technology. The ecosystems, they are about societal challenges. So one of the cases is My Digital Move. So enable citizens when they move that they can share their data very easily with their service providers, but also enable them, if they want to sell their house, that they can do it next business day, because data becomes interoperable. We automate the flow both in public and in private sector. Also, we enable citizens to share their professional data, such as their diploma, but also their income, which is not government data. And they can share their data when they would like to apply for a new loan or other services for their bank. Also in that context, not sharing their payslip anymore, but only that data that matters for the time they would like to share it. Another use case is the My Mobility use case. So creating a My Mobility profile for citizens when in the context of shared mobile, where they stay in control of their data and they can switch modi without having to share their data over and over. And also, if they share their data, they can share it in a safe GDPR compliant way. And we are also setting up use cases doing similar things, but for companies. Now, this strategy fits within the strategy of the common European data spaces. Within that context, we have invested in a data marketplace, so data can be findable. So something like yellow pages for data. We're investing in Flemish sensor data space, which are open source building blocks to enable the data, for instance, mobility data, to be published very easily by the providers and to be queried very easy by the reusers on the scale of a city or a region. And also on a horizontal level, we are investing in the personal data vaults or pods. As you see, there are different data spaces such as health, mobility, GovTech, and we're one of the fundaments, one of the most important fundaments we've been investing in is creating interoperable machine-readable data in line with the European and international standards. Now, what are the steps in order to set up the data utility company? Of course, we started with a business plan. It's a company which is initiated from the government with all the shares are now at the level of the government. We started creating the new legislation. It took us almost a year, and now it has been to the parliament, checked with all the legal authorities, and its final version is being ratified. Also, parallel, we started setting up the organization, and this means setting up the infrastructure to share the personal data, but also starting up the ecosystems and supporting business models. And the idea is that we can launch the data utility company together with the legislation this year, and also give each Flemish citizen a data vault in line with the international solid standards. So one of the less visible and less sexy topics of what we have been doing the last year was building or working on the legislation, on the decree. And yeah, our decree helps creating the legal basis for sharing personal data, putting citizens again in control of their data, and enabling that the data from the government can flow also to the vault, but also they can gather all the data in their vaults, data just from private applications, which enable citizens, users to also port that data between the different applications and stay in control. So to conclude, the idea which I started my presentation with was to focus on utilities, data utilities, and this is what the data utility company is all about, to ensure that just like water and electricity, that data can start to flow, to become more interoperable, more accessible, and more secure in order to get more privacy, but also more innovation. And we are truly convinced that this network of interoperable data will create like data gravity, will attract new apps, and the apps will create more data. And this is one of the cornerstones of starting up or accelerating the digital transformation in Flanders, and to enable companies to participate in the digital economy. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I am looking forward to your questions.
Raf, thank you for your very, very inspiring inspiration. I want to move to Flanders now.
You're welcome.
I really like your points. I really like the idea of data being like a utility, like water, like electricity, that it needs to flow, but also to give back control to the people of the data, because your presentation is very inspiring on that sense. And I will ask you a question. I know I'm moderator. I shouldn't take advantage of my position to ask questions before the audience, but is the data vault you are speaking about similar to the European e-wallet? What are the differences, if there are any differences? How do you envision the integration from cross-border of data vaults? Can I benefit from one in Paris? I would love to.
Well, I think we should look at different levels. Of course, for authentication, we are building upon extensions of ADAS, reusing existing infrastructure on the federal level. On the level of data, we've been building since a decade on European standards, such as the core vocabularies from Interoperable Europe. And this must ensure that all data that is created in Flanders and reused can be reused across Europe and beyond. The vault itself, we opted to not create new standards, but to use the solid protocol which builds upon existing web standards. So we will be compliant by things that are happening worldwide. And as it builds on standards, and we are confident that we will be able, if as a region all the data is there interoperable, consent-based, that we will be able to connect to European wallets. My colleagues are well connected in several European programs, as well as European innovation projects, where we are starting to research how we can connect the idea of the vault with the idea of a wallet on the European level, because we think it's all about interoperability. Thank you for your question. It's a very interesting one.
And thanks a lot for your answer. If any in the audience have a question, we still have a few minutes before our next and last presentation.
If you allow me, Jose.
Of course, Goran, I always can count on you.
So, Raf, it was an interesting presentation. I liked the intro of yours where you mentioned that World Wide Web was actually not so much technological innovation, or rather process innovation. And I definitely tried to understand the philosophy of yours. I understand that since 2018, you are hardly working in the Flanders region to actually make it interoperable and to bring back the ownership to the citizens and businesses over their data. So I'm wondering, because you did mention that you relied a lot on Nisa Square in terms of the standards, so you didn't seek for some new ones. On the other side, how did you cope in a challenge of attaining collaborative actors, being it citizens, businesses, and especially the government? You did mention that you have experienced this data silo, and on both parts, businesses and government. And what actually made your pilot and movement scalable to come to the extent of making nowadays data utility company? Because I'm quite sure that the decision has been made on empirical knowledge and on some very accurate proofs for you and the colleagues that you may invest, because there is an obvious need and there is an obvious persuasion of the audiences and clients with whom you're going to work. So I'm guessing that this can be a role model also for us in the Western Balkans, because all Western Balkan 6 countries have had the opportunity to learn from Nisa Square. 2 of the economies have been in a possibility to even become members and users of this, and I hope the others will actually come over this decision and take the benefits of this very valuable project run by the EU.
Well, thank you for your question. I tried to address the different sub-questions. First of all, when it comes to Interoperable Europe and ensuring that data can flow, we started our interoperability program in 2012, Open Standards for Linked Organizations, which was from day one in close collaboration with ISA Square, Interoperable Europe, and which was a bottom-up initiative, crowdfunded from the local governments, which is now at regional and local level, and from day one in close collaboration with the private sector and academia. And there we have built a process for creating a level playing field to agree on data standards based on international standards and open source building blocks to manage all the definitions and the data governance in Flanders. And if you want, in another moment, I would be happy to share that strategy of the open standards for linked organizations on how we are managing standards in 123 domains, and also in managing over 6,000 machine readable definitions by software we've created together with Ghent University. So this is on the level of the standards. Then on the level of the data, in 2015, when we started up the citizen profile, the idea from day one was to give citizens back control, but we were not able to due to GDPR regulation. We couldn't ask citizens for their consent because we are in an imbalanced relation. As being a government, we could not ask them, give us consent to share your data with a bank. And it would not have been a good practice. So we started exploring, and we ended up in the team of Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who had the inspiring story where the data subject, me as a citizen, becomes the data controller. What we also did was we have a huge survey in Flanders for citizens, which is both an on and offline survey. And there we have detected that citizens were ready to set this step and to put them in control again. Of course, we know that we are not going to, between brackets, sell data vaults, but we are going to sell them convenience and transparency. And because technology is always a means to an end. And then we started experimenting in 2018. We were also we shared the ideas and the insights on the ISA Square conference of DG Digit, and we got a lot of feedback, which we used to improve our strategy. And then within the context of the COVID resilience in Flanders, we've seen that both governments and also companies and citizens were ready, and we started up this initiative, and in parallel with academia, a solid lab. And it's a lab that will follow certain groups of user groups and continuously improve, learn and improve the services, which will be focusing on things like contextual integrity, improving that citizens really know what they are doing, and improving the services as we go.
Thank you a lot for this explanation, and I'm pretty sure that the experience of yours can be scaled up also in other countries, and also for the entire Western Balkan region. So I'm pretty keen on following up whether a data utility company webinar may be set in order to examine the ways to come up with this model, and wishing you good luck to widespread it over the EU member states and also to infect us in the Western Balkans.
Thank you very much for your question and your valuable feedback.
I would like to address the audience. If you have, not necessarily now is too much to digest, But in the near future, when you see the presentations that will be available for everyone, if you have more questions for draft or for any other of the presenters, please reach us, reach Sigma, and we will do our best to fulfill all your requests of more information, of guidance, good practices, anything. We're here to help. You are actually the key players. You are the ones who are going to make e-services work in the Western Balkans. So please, we consider us your partners here and to be at your disposal. So let me introduce to, let me say first goodbye to Raf. Thank you. You can, of course, stay if you wish and if you have the time. And let me introduce our last speaker. She's Ludmila Rabchinska. She was Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. And there she had run many very interesting projects of bilateral recognition of EIDs and e-signatures, like she's going to be explaining them to us today. So please, Ludmila, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Joseph. It's my pleasure to be with you today here with such current circumstances in Ukraine, but at the same time, thank you so much for welcoming me. Yes, indeed, I had been Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Digital Transformation in Ukraine, and among others, I was responsible for the electronic identification and electronic trust services. If you allow me, I will share my presentation. Thank you so much. And today I would like to stop on issues of the mutual recognition, trust services, and electronic identification. Ukraine has a very broad experience on such matters, so I would like to stop on the three variety: the bilateral recognition, mutual recognition between the EU and third country, and also worldwide cross-border recognition, because all of this variety have differences, and I would like to share with you what is this. First of all, we need to stop on the minimum requirements for the mutual recognition. One of these is a legal requirement that means that all countries which want to receive mutual recognition need to achieve the needed level of the legislation in the country. Also, that is the technical requirements. That means that all providers of the services and also the country as well need to have the applicable technical level for their mutual recognition. Supervisory recognition, that is also the measures about having the supervisory body, special authority, or with power of monitoring, controlling, and etc. And also, the last but not least, that is trust requirements about the standards and other rules that we need to be in line for providing the service in the levels that are needed for the citizens and for the businesses. Starting for the bilateral recognition, if three of the requirements that I mentioned before, legal, trust, and supervisory, is okay for both countries, we need to go forward to the technical requirements. First of all, we need to define the trust or identity services. Why I talk not only about trust services, I will talk also about identity services, because you will see it in the future in my next slide that when we talk about mutual recognition, we talk not only about electronic signature, we also talk about other identity services that can be used for the mutual recognition. After that, we also need to think about test the cross-border technical interoperability, and we need to design solution for the compatibility with the requirements, and of course test the readiness of national infrastructure for cross-border interoperability. And after that, of course, we need to disseminate the pilot results, because we need to understand if it is possible to continue, or we need to improve our system for the continuous exploitation. And I want to share with you Ukraine experience in such pilot. We had 3 successful pilot between Ukraine and Moldova, Ukraine and Estonia, and one last biggest pilot between 6 countries: Armenia, Georgia, Ukraine, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. In the last 3 years, we implemented all of these 3 pilots. We work with under umbrella of EU-funded EU for Digital Facility. That is a big project that funded by EU, and on my understanding, this project may help also in the Western Balkan countries if you are asking them for this help. So what is the result of our pilots? As I mentioned, whole pilots was successful. The first one was between Ukraine and Moldova, like the pilot between Eastern Partnership countries, not the EU members, but at the same time we tested our trust list and e-signature, certificate authority, and also timestamps. Everything was valid, and whole both party of the pilot can successfully validate the certificate. The second pilot between Ukraine and Estonia, you may see on the screen the testing for cross-border e-signature interoperability, and how we starting, where we're starting on the Ukrainian side, and after that we validate the Ukrainian signature and Estonian signature. Of course, you may see that Ukrainian signature marked in red, that unknown, because Ukrainian provider is not in the trust list, but at the same time Estonian side could read and understand what is the signature was from Ukrainian side. And the next, the biggest pilot, we testing several amount of signature, 6 signature. We're starting from the Estonia. After that, Georgia receives the document and validates the signature and put their signature. We send it to Lithuania, Ukraine, Latvia, and of course to the Armenia. And all of this signature was readable and valid. So the conclusion of all of these pilots was that whole countries could use their certificates and signature for validation, and we can conclude the MRA, mutual recognition agreement. At the same time, we received the information from the European Commission that EU members could not separately conclude such agreement, only the whole European Union. So that's why we stopped our negotiation with Latvia and Lithuania on such matter, and Ukraine in 2019 submit request to the European Commission about mutual recognition between EU and third country. And on this matter, I'm going to the second part of my presentation about mutual recognition between EU and third country. So, as I mentioned, we started this process in 2019, and as I know, Ukraine was the first country who submit this request using the Article 14 in IDAS regulation about possibility of mutual recognition between third country or international organization according to Article 218 TFEU. And we did it. Actually, it was a big surprise from European Commission, but for us, no, because we implemented EIDAS in 2017. So we decided that we could continue forward and ask about mutual recognition. And I need to share with you that we are waiting for a year to receive the answer, because the European Commission thinking about how to implement Article 14. They do not have any procedure, and actually they elaborated for us and also for Japan, as we understand that Japan also want to submitted to receive mutual recognition with the EU. So we are like a pilot countries. But at the same time, we need to say that not whole the variety of identification means covered by the Article 14. Only 9 types of qualified trust services and trust service provided by the trust service providers are covered by the Article 14. And that is not all in use. Actually, if we go deeply in European Commission documents, we understand that they are waiting only for the recognition of electronic signature and electronic seals. For such a reason, European Commission elaborates the special MRA cookbook, and you will see on the bottom of my screen the website with the pilot documents, and I encourage you to go and to see more about this, what they propose and how and what the way they develop for the third countries and of course for the international organization, but at the same time for the including to the EU trust list of trust lists, your service provider and the country as well need to go to the several steps and potentially important pilot for negotiation and goes to all these phases. So you may see what European Commission proposed us as the third countries and international organization. Here, as you will see, 8 steps. I think you will need only the first 6 of them for preparation and assessment and of course the piloting and of course the preparation for the concluding the agreement. So the monitoring, I think it is a step of the of course of the step of implementation, but for the sign the agreement you need only the first 5 or on only 6, but that is not all of them. Ukrainian experience shows that we received additional work plan with additional 17 steps from European Commission, and now we are on the middle of implementation of this work plan. We implemented 50% of this working plan. I think that each country will receive their working plan. They may be maybe different. You may receive more than 70 steps or less than 70 steps, but I just want to prepare you that it could be, because our experience shows that we receive such a working plan. And of course, as I mentioned, we already put a request about mutual recognition in 2019. So we do not go on this floor, but at the same time we are something between the first and the second step. What I want to stress your attention. If you will go to the website that European Commission elaborates special for the third country, you will find not only MRA cookbook, you also will find the checklist, and that is our very important checklist. We filled it, the checklist 2 years ago, and send it to European Commission, and actually still waiting for the answer. That is also very long trip, and of course I encourage all of you, if you are wishing to receive mutual recognition, to start as early as it possible for collaboration with European Commission on such matter. And of course you will also find MRA element specification and usage, and also 2 tools that also will help you understand and to test your infrastructure. The core conclusion here. The way of receiving mutual recognition with the EU is very long, and you need to start as early as it possible. But the good news is that now European Commission know how to implement the Article 14 because we pushed them 2.5 years ago on such way, and now they are ready to receive a request from the third countries. That is very good news for all of third countries, no matter you are a candidate or you have other status. What is also is important to say is that when country received the as a status will become a member, you will still need to go through all of this step, because the question about service providers exists, and all countries need to provide necessary information about their providers to put there to the list of trust list. So if you are thinking that when you receive the status of the member of European Union, you don't need to do all of such things, it is a false opinion. You need to do it at the same time. So if you are wishing to have such a single market usage of electronic trust services, you need to go through all of this process. And last but not least, the third part of my presentation, that is worldwide cross-border recognition. And I want to stop here on a matter of the Electoral working group that now has working on a draft model law on the use of cross-border recognition of identity management and trust services, and we worked through since 2017 on this new draft law. I will not stop on existing model law of electronic signature, because I think and I believe that all of you are knowing about existence of such law. I will stop about draft law because I think it is very ambitious and coordinate and will coordinately change whole relations in the area of mutual recognition, identity management and trust services. It is also a very important thing that Unicitral and working group use as terms of identity management. That is new for us, for European countries, as a term of identity means or identity services. And I think it is also important to stress that is something very similar, but not the same. And I encourage you to see what it means, the identity management. So new draft law, we hope it will be adopted in 2 years, because we are now on the final stage. Working group worked 2 times a year. So now I may see that we are in the final stage, and all of us, all of countries waiting for adoption in a year, maybe in 2 years. The draft law divided on 4 chapters: general provision, identity management, trust services, and international aspect. That is also need to say that from the very beginning, trust services do not exist in draft law, because Unicitral do not believe that we need to divide trust services and identity management. But after a huge conversation, the decision was to divide identity management and trust services. It is also very interesting, because working group the biggest amount of time work on, especially on identity management and cross-border recognition, especially of identity management. Sorry. Oh, here we are. So what working group proposed us in the aspect of cross-border use of identity management and trust services is because that is one of the main goal and purpose of the draft. First of all, we need to stop on the principles, because it is very important. The first principle, it is technology neutrality and non-discrimination against geographic origin. And I think you may see that it is quite different between EU approach and Unicitral approach, because working group said that it is very important to have technology, technology neutrality and not discriminate against geographic origins. Also, draft law does not require the establishment of a formal institution and establish a common set of levels of insurance. So you do not find in draft laws special levels of insurance, because all of them are different. And that is also very important to say here. And one more very important aspect about cross-border legal recognition, that is the possibility of recognizing foreign identity management and trust services is relying on foreign determination and designation. And also the enacting jurisdiction may decide whether operate beside on automatic recognition or presumption, and that is also very important. So draft law and working group decided that countries do not go through whole of previous that I show you precision to reassure other countries that you has the same level all technical, trust, legal of standard. Each country may automatically recognize or recognize it by presumption. It means that identity management and trust services designed by the foreign authorities would be presumed reliable in the enacting jurisdiction, but would not have legal status as designed in the that jurisdiction without further action by the designing authority. So that is also very important for us to understand what will be the future, what will be the next in the area of cross-border recognition. And of course, I'm sure that European Union also need to think about actually need to go through all of these steps for the third countries, or maybe European Union made to think about automatic recognition or presumption. That's all from my side. Any question, I'm welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ludmila. A very indeed interesting presentation. I think very useful for the region, like the Western Balkans. There also have the vision, the aim of having recognized between the region all trust services and all digital IDs, and also with European members. So I think your presentation has been very, very useful, and also thank you for giving us a glimpse on the UN draft law, which is also very, very interesting. And if you allow me to take advantage again of my role of moderator, I will ask you, how do you see the future, the process of automatic recognition? Do you think we will see this happening soon, or we will have multilateral agreements like we have this hack stamp for diplomas? When I finished my diploma in Spain, I wanted to study a master's in the UK. I need to pass all these stamps. Old, I'm quite old. Maybe you don't remember this, but do you see like whole international treaty on mutual recognition? How do you envision the future?
I believe that it will be applicable for countries who live together and have very broad connection in different economic area. For example, for the Balkan countries, it may be very much applicable. Of course, for the Eastern Partnership countries, it also may be very much applicable, because now Ukraine has ambitions to conclude agreement with Azerbaijan, also with Moldova and other countries. So I think and I believe after the UN will adopt the new draft law, the country who have the same the one border may use this opportunity, and of course will conclude such simple, let's say, simple agreement for the implementing this opportunity.
Thank you, Ludmila, for sharing your vision on the future. And if anyone in the audience has a question, please, Goran.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Ludmila, for giving us also a kind of assurance that once being equal partner in EU-led initiatives such as Ukraine was within EU for Digital Facility project, that the Ukrainian third third countries can become an inspiring case. Actually, I noted that you have had like 3 different pilots, which are very much comprehensive and which ended up with a positive solution. And now you're in a waiting call for reaction from the EU for 2 out of these 3 initiatives. But what was also a kind of benchmark for success for me is actually the second cross-border e-signature pilot that you mentioned and talked about between Ukraine and Estonia, because Kaido is here with us. He's an Estonian colleague, and we all know that Estonia is really like an inspiring case at the global level for e-gov and digital transformation. So what actually made you equal partner, and what brought the success that the entire e-signature pilot ended up with a prototype solution showcasing the creation and verification of electronic signatures between these 2 countries? And has this experience of yours also helped you to actually assure the quality in the very next stage, which was actually about with another countries, 6 countries in total? So have you actually been the equal between the others, in a sense that you brought this excellence from communicating and collaborating with Estonia in the phase before October 21?
Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for the question. Actually, if we are going to the past and how everything started, the EU for Digital Facility, they announced the call among among Eastern Partnership countries who want to participate in such pilot, and they had 2 slots between Eastern Partnership country and Eastern Partnership country, and between EU country and Eastern Partnership country. And Ukraine win both of them because our infrastructure and our legislation, and of course our trust and supervisory level was the highest among other countries. Actually, why it's happened? As I mentioned before, because on that time, I already put the request to the European Commission about mutual recognition. We implemented the EIDAS, and we really wish to receive the mutual recognition. For us, for Ukraine, it is very much important because whole management and the biggest amount of population of Ukraine believe that European Union way, that is the way that is our goal. So we are working on implementation in whole areas, whole economic areas, and also in the area of electronic trust services as well. So Ukraine was the most prepared country for the implementation of such pilot. And actually, if we compare the time, because we started with Moldova and Ukraine, with Moldova and Estonia on the same way, but we finished with Estonia much more faster in a month and a half, I think. But for the Moldova, it took more than 3 months for us. So the pilot was very quick implemented, and because whole sides, whole parties really want to do it. So if you have the wish, if you are willing to implement it, you may do it very quickly. And the same situation was with the last pilot with 6 countries. Ukrainian took a part, not because even we win, but won the competition, but because the project proposed us to continue to implement, to test the infrastructure because they see that we can do it. We have enough capacity and enough professionals, experts in our team to implement such such projects. So I inspire all of you, Western Balkan country, to work constantly on such issues, because Ukraine now has a lot of work to do on other area, but I do not really want to stop all of these processes, and we are will be very welcome as a champion during candidate countries to implement in this area such projects or different, but I think they will be.
Thank you very much for being transformational leader and a good example, and many thanks for this presentation.
Thank you, my pleasure.
I also would address you in the audience from the Western Balkans, like if you want to start any process of mutual recognition, either bilateral recognition or recognition with the European Union, don't hesitate to contact us in Sigma. Maybe we can assist. With the help of Ludmila, we'll definitely be able to assist you in this very, very important topic, because we all want a world where we can move freely between countries. We all want to be able to enjoy services from different countries. Even as a tourist, you may have to prove your identity. Even as a tourist, you might have to prove some characteristics of your identity, some attributes. Maybe you have to prove you have some disability, or you have to prove you have the right to get certain discounts, or you have special necessity. And if you cannot use the data of your country because it's not recognized, then you're very vulnerable abroad. And of course, if you have to flee your country because it's a tragic situation like the one we are living now, this becomes also more urgent. These people who have to change country unwillingly, they also need help from the government, and they need help for actually data be transferred and data be recognized. But of course, data in the hands of the people, not in the hands of private companies only, but in the hands of the people. So if no one from you have any more questions about this, at least for now, of course, I understand this lot of information to digest. So I will say goodbye to Ludmila, but before saying that, I would like to share that just yesterday, OECD launched the OECD Hub on Ukraine. It's a new website. I'm gonna share the link now for you in the chat, so where you can watch not only OECD official position on the aggression of Ukraine, on the war of Ukraine, but also you have some policy resources, some analysis, and some very interesting information produced by OECD colleagues. So as we're approaching the end of the event, I would like to thank you for your time, all of you. It has been very, very interesting event. We have envisioned the future where we will have all our data in a digital wallet, in a citizen vault, as we are seeing in Flanders, where we are going to be able to disclose only part of this data. If I have to prove I am a father for something, maybe for an allowance, I will not have to disclose the name of my son and the date of birth. If I have to disclose I'm married, why I should disclose everything? The name of my wife, her date of birth, like it's in the marriage certificate, her nationality. So we are envisioning the future, and the future is citizen can control the data, and the data can flow, and the data is stored not in the private sector, like they are actually competing to get our data, but the data is stored for the citizens and by the citizens in a way that is trusted and can be shared only the necessary part and only for the time period required. So this is the future. This is what European Union is going towards. This is also what we're seeing in the regions. We're seeing in many countries in the Western Balkans, they're working with new digital IDs. I'm seeing in the audience Mr. Nikola Nikolov, who's working in that in North Macedonia, but also in many other countries in the regions, and also the importance of cross-border services. As I said before, people just not stay the whole life in one country. So it's very important we as public servants, as governments, help them and help society, not only cross-border for the economy, that of course cross-borders is always good for economic growth, but also for citizens. Last, I want to say that this was our second seminar. We have a third seminar coming on service standards and quality in the region, in the Western Balkan region. It will be held at the end of June or early July. We will address you with exact date and exact agenda. I just want to pass the floor to Goran to thank him for all his collaboration preparing this workshop. And of course, I've been asking the chat if presentations will be shared. Yeah, they will be shared by email with all of you. So you will have all this useful and rich information we have been sharing today. So please, Goran, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you for participants for these numerous interesting presentations. I think we have came after many interesting aspects that we can still jointly with colleagues from Sigma OECD work and inspire colleagues both at the EU member states and in the Western Balkans. What attracted, again, in addition to what Jose mentioned, attention in all these presentations is that it leads me to the conclusion that there will be like more importance given to digital identity and trust services because we have even more mobility being present in the public administration and the entire societies. And we have another aspect that is more teleworking, which is another aspect which we need also to take care of because of the e-services. We have also accelerated shift to digital first servicing, boosted by pandemic and also these other, so to say, threats in the world. And we have also the need to co-create, to co-design, and to make a kind of more integrated public supervision of digital identification systems. And the last but not least, I would say that the crisis management and crisis communication is something that is very much important. And while we are speaking about resilience of the public administration ecosystems, resilience about the cybersecurity systems, resilience as such, we cannot forget that crisis communication became already transversal topic. So I would also be thinking that this type of integration of whole of society and holistic approach could be seen in another phase of incentives related to the EIDs and trust services being seen in a more holistic way. Thank you once again, and thank you very much, Jose, for inviting me to be part of this event.
So thank you. We're closing the event just 3 minutes before time. So thanks a lot for your time. Please keep on your nice work, keep on your good work, and we'll definitely meet in future events and future seminars. And I just want to say again that we're here to cooperate with you, Western Balkan public administrations. If you need anything regarding this topic, or if you have any suggestions for future seminars, or you have an idea for a presentation to share your experience, please don't be shy. Please contact us. Contact my colleague Nick Thais or myself or Goran, and we will try to do our best, not only to help you, but also to allow you to disseminate your practices, to discuss your problems, implementing new policies, to share your visions, to share your problems. And all together, we will manage a better Western Balkan public administrations and better service delivery, that it is our aim. So, goodbye, and thank you all.